So my next guest is Nick Ossello from Colorado, specifically from Wheat Ridge, a Notre Dame football and lacrosse player, multi-year MLL player, two-time champion, NLL player, and now playing currently in the PLL and currently stuck on PLL Island, which is in Utah. So how are you doing today, Nick?
Doing pretty good. You nailed it right there. It's you caught me at a good time because I don't think anybody in the league is doing anything other than just sitting in their hotel room. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So we just get right into lacrosse. So you grew up in Wheat Ridge in Colorado, and I know that we talked a little bit off air about how different where you grew up and playing in high school was compared to a more traditional high school experience lacrosse-wise. Can you just kind of talk about kind of learning to play lacrosse there?
Yeah, so I was lucky just because I was part of kind of the first youth program in my area, and kind of once it caught, it really started to expand at a very, very rapid rate, which was awesome to kind of not necessarily be on the ground floor of it, but just kind of see the evolution of like what my youth program looked like versus what it is now. So that's been really cool. And then also I know a lot of areas do this, but maybe not so much out east, but we like Wheat Ridge High School, which is where I went, we couldn't support a lacrosse team just with the students that attended Wheat Ridge High School. So we took from like 4 different high schools in the area and played under the Wheat Ridge High School like logo and name. So it was pretty cool. Even though like we were all playing for Wheat Ridge, there were 4 other schools, which kind of like was a really cool immersion. Like when you play club in summer and you get to know guys from other schools and like then you're hanging out with them and you kind of just like expand your network. A lot of guys only get that in club, but I got that in high school. So it was a cool way to be competitive with some of the bigger and more established schools. And also is a great way to meet people and kind of get introduced to, networking isn't the right word when you're playing high school lacrosse, but just like making buddies and hanging out and getting to kind of hear what their school's like and, maybe try to go over and like go to one of their parties or something. So it was a really cool experience. Not gonna lie.
Definitely. And then from Wheat Ridge, you went to a big step up in Notre Dame and a 2-sport athlete there for a little bit. How did you kind of make the transition from Wheat Ridge to Notre Dame? Was it mostly club? Did you get noticed in high school?
Yeah. So I was fortunate where I was, like the resources. And so even though like we weren't able to support our own team, like I actually do a lot of coaching in places like Idaho and Montana, and they're actually very similar to where I was. But the advantage that I had was, there's DU, a perennial powerhouse Division I program. There's the Outlaws, there's the Mammoth. It's just a generally sports crazed town. So even though like the Wheat Ridge area couldn't support their own team just with that high school, there were still awesome club opportunities. So I played a lot for it was a team called Icon, and then there was a team called The Elite, and I kind of split time between the two of them. But to have a guy like Bill Tierney and like Ryan Brown and like Nate Watkins and those guys that could help me through the recruiting process, that have been there, that are either currently coaching D1 or played, it was kind of like a huge game changer, so that they could help me like, hey, these are the tournaments that you should go to. This club team like is going to play in these tournaments. That's why you should be here. And then a lot of it, fortunately I played football in high school as well. And some of the, like my senior year football tapes found their way to some college coaches. So it was kind of like an unorthodox kind of roundabout way, but it, fortunately Coach Byrne actually, who was a defensive coordinator at Notre Dame for my 4 years, he recruited me based off of some high school football film that was floating around there. And, it's just every recruiting story is unique, but, I was fortunate to have committed to Maryland, decommit to try and look at football options. And then in that decommitment period, get noticed by Notre Dame. So, I help out a lot of kids with recruiting right now, and to have a kind of unorthodox story is definitely helpful for kids that come from like, an Idaho or a New Mexico or like wherever. So.
Yeah. And there's good athletes everywhere. They just have to kind of have that little push or a little help that it seems like you're giving them right now to kind of get to a place where it's a really good fit for them.
Yeah, definitely trying to. And, there's just this huge wave where kids are so caught up. It's like, what can I do to go be a Division I player? And it's like, well, realistically, if you try to go D1, that might not be the best fit. So even trying to like change mindsets where it's like, it doesn't matter where you go to college, because realistically, lacrosse isn't going to be your profession. It's not like a football player that has the potential to go to the league and that's kind of the goal. Even with the inception of the PLL and with the MLL and with the NLL and like all these awesome experiences after college, I always tell people, I'm like, take lacrosse completely out of the equation. Would you still want to attend that college? And if they're like, yeah, maybe, I'm like, well, then it's not the right college for you. So,
100%.
sometimes you just got to shift their mindset before you can talk.
Yeah, and I think at least that's what I was told, and what I've seems like everyone that I know around the area and the kind of region of schools I go to, they've been told something similar, where you got to really take lacrosse out of that picture to kind of find out
Yeah.
why you want to go to that school. But
Yeah,
you did end up at
100%.
Notre Dame, where you absolutely amazing career on the lacrosse team and also played football. How do you manage to be a two-sport athlete with just so much time being spent on
Well,
sports?
just to shed some light on that, is I wasn't ever necessarily a two-sport athlete. Is I played 4 years of lacrosse, and then after the 4 years of lacrosse, I was a walk-on for 1 year. So it wasn't like I was going right from football season into the fall to lacrosse season into the spring and like back and forth. Because straight up, I could have never seen any of the fields on either lacrosse or football going in. So as far as like kind of like my career at Notre Dame, I struggled a lot freshman and sophomore year, not only on the lacrosse field, but academically as well. It was a huge uptick. I'm very proud of Wheat Ridge and like the high school that I went to. At the same time, it was a very difficult transition for me. You go from being kind of a big fish in a small pond to, oh yeah, well, guess what? Like, you're now the dumbest guy in class, the worst athlete on the field, like everything like that. It took me a long time, and you kind of mentioned it there, but realistically, the guys who have the easiest transitions are the guys who can manage their time most effectively. And I went into college thinking it was going to be Blue Mountain State, and it definitely was not. So the first test I ever got back, I got a 46 out of 100. And it took me a long time to really change that mindset so that I could study for like 2 hours a day, because just going to class wasn't enough, and then get in extra work and stop partying so much and start studying more. And funny enough, like when I started kind of finding that balance is when I really started having more fun, because like, yeah, I was kind of partying a lot my freshman and sophomore year, but it's not fun to struggle on the field and get shitty report cards and have those discussions with your coaches and parents. So even though it's like, oh yeah, I was having a great time, when I found that balance, I got to enjoy the parties more, the school more, and the lacrosse more. So took me about 2 years to figure that out, honestly. And I'm definitely glad I did. I definitely thank guys like Jack Neer. He was a huge influence as far as me getting my shit together for that senior year. But it was a transition that I struggled with a lot, actually.
And then while you did play on the field and when you started to really excel, you kind of were, at least based on your statistics, seemed like a do-it-all type of player. Put balls in the back of the net, took some face-offs, a lot of ground balls. Was that just kind of something you kind of developed as kind of a high school multi-sport athlete?
Yeah. So, a lot of guys kind of go into college with this mindset, like, here's what I can bring to the table. And even if that's what you think you can bring to the table, a lot of times that might not be what your college coach sees you bringing. So, I remember freshman year, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be this great athlete. I'm probably going to play defense. And, if I have to, I'm going to face off. But I was so shitty at defense and so bad at team defense that I should never have touched the field if it wasn't for face-off. So when he recognized that I could contribute on the face-off, I just put all my time, energy, and effort into training for that. And then sophomore year, I was like, the second face-off guy, but also I had worked on defense a little bit, so they let me play a couple shifts. Junior year, I could face off, I could be trusted on defense, and I also played offense. And then senior year was kind of like, yeah, face off, and whatever happens, stay on the field. We trust you on offense. We trust you on defense. Just go out and be the player that we know you can be. So, yes, like I kind of played a bunch of different roles, but it's not like I showed up and immediately started doing that. I had to work kind of on each individual craft every year, so that by senior year, it's like, oh yeah, like this guy can, kind of really fit in any different role. It's like, well, yeah, because I've been getting my ass kicked the last 3 years, and finally it's my turn to show that work in a sense.
Well, that Swiss Army knife that you kind of turned into in the lacrosse field was definitely wanted in the professional rankings. Obviously, now you've played in 3 different leagues. You started with the MLL, and were fortunate enough to win a championship twice.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of the transition from college to lacrosse, to pro lacrosse, and then being a part of those 2 teams?
Yeah, so that was a much better transition. Is I fit in a lot because like college definitely like broke me down just to build me back up again. So when I graduated, especially kind of coming off of that year of football where as a child, like as a kid, I always wanted to be a college football player. So that was like the number one goal that I have always wanted in my athletic career, and I was able to accomplish it. And like coming off of that and just like having the confidence is like, it allowed me to go into the MLL. I was with the Chesapeake Bayhawks and just have like pretty much as much fun as possible. Is, like a lot of rookies will kind of show up and, maybe be a little bit more timid, maybe try to figure some things out. And, I just kind of showed up and I was like, listen, like this is my personality. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to talk shit. I'm going to play hard. And, like I had a really good rookie year. And again, it was kind of like I got traded to the Outlaws and I played a lot of offense. And then about halfway through that season, they kind of switched me over to a more defensive role. And kind of like what I think was really special about the Outlaws teams and why we won 2 championships is there are a lot of guys in both leagues and just in professional sports where egos are a part of it. And if you move someone from offensive midi to defensive midi, which is, kind of a shitty position, you're getting dodged on, you're probably getting beat, you're getting slid to, all this stuff. A lot of guys don't take that very well, but because I kind of had that background in college where it's like, oh, I was like a D-midi for pretty much 2.5, 3 years. Like I was like, all right, cool. Like I'll just do whatever you need and I'll push transition. So like that was very recognized on the Outlaws team, and there were guys being shuffled around all over. I think Eli Gobrecht kind of showed up as a shorty. They put a pull in his hand and then they trusted him. He's one of the better LSMs and pulls that I know. Like, so every piece, like whatever was asked, it wasn't, yeah, but coach, I'm actually an offensive midi, so I want those shifts. It was, all right, cool. Like, let's do it. And so that's definitely why kind of that team first, we don't care who gets the credit as long as we get the win. Kind of made those years for the Denver Outlaws special. And, I grew up going to Outlaws games, so that was kind of like the cherry on top.
Yeah, not a lot of people get to play for any semblance of pro sports in their hometown, which you grow, like you mentioned, you grow up. I'm from Boston. I grew up wanting to play for the Bruins like every day, Bruins jersey, all that jazz. But it's so amazing just to be able to have that opportunity, and something that literally any kid who's ever played sports can go back to a time when they were playing in the backyard or doing something like that. Just imagine they're scoring a goal for their hometown team, which is just an amazing experience. Then at the same time as the MLL, you are also now playing in the indoor league. Did you have any indoor experience before kind of going into that league?
No. So a lot of Americans, kind of their first experience with indoor lacrosse is training camp in the NLL. So I remember talking to the coaches, talking to Steve Govett and Josh Gross, who are just fantastic people. Can't say enough good things about both of those gentlemen. They kind of saw this thing where they were like, okay, this guy's kind of big. He played football. He's good at lacrosse. Let's give him a chance. And that was a little different than outdoor, because outdoor, I can kind of go in and just be confident. I've been playing it my whole life. But indoor, I was like, okay, let me kind of see how this works. I was talking to Greg Downing about how to play defense. I kind of knew Jeremy Noble a little bit. And the first box practice I ever had, it was just 2 hours of absolute chaos, getting my ass kicked. And it really didn't slow down from there. So while I could, kind of compete athletically, it's such a different game with Canadians and like how much craftier they are. And like, even when you think you're defending a guy off ball, like a different type of position, a different type of stick pressure, a different type of defense. It's very difficult to pick up. So credit to all the Americans that could, find a comfortable spot on a roster. But, I kind of spent my entire career, if you can call it that, mostly on the practice squad, maybe getting a nod if there was like a weird situation. But, just it's a beautiful game. And like the guys that can play it well, it is something else. Like, I don't know, like I look at a guy kind of like Brent Adams, who can absolutely use his speed and his agility. And then I look at a guy, kind of like Chris Cloutier, who, just uses his stick skills. And then a guy like Mark Matthews, who, kind of uses his size and his ridiculous stick skills. So like the way that people transition into box always, I think, is an awesome transition to watch. So, it's definitely way different than outdoor. And, it's almost like incomparable in a sense, but damn, if those weren't some absolutely fun times with some absolute beauties.
And you got the ability or the chance to be able to live in Southern California and play lacrosse, professional lacrosse, which doesn't really happen. I don't think there's any other case of that happening. Did you guys play in practice, or at least practice like on a outdoor court similarly?
Yeah, and like I grew up playing lacrosse outdoor most of my life, but to play indoor outside was something else. So they had like this little rink that was outside the main arena, and it was funny because I didn't really appreciate it necessarily as much, but like watching some of these Canadians that they were flying in, having never played anything box related outside, and they were like, holy shit, like we are playing box lacrosse while watching the sunset in Southern California. Like, you got to be kidding me. So that was really cool to watch, like kind of their reaction, because that was only my third season of indoor, and realistically I didn't really understand the gravity of it, but watching them was more fun than actually doing the practices and stuff.
Now you are in the PLL, going into your second year. Obviously, you kind of made social media buzz when you got threw a punch and then body slammed by Blaze Reardon on the Chaos. Obviously, you're pretty important on lacrosse Twitter, and you have a good amount of followers. Is that your first time really being like? I would say that was the thing. Anytime you go on any sort of social media and you kind of follow lacrosse pages, that was everywhere. Was that kind of like your first blow up of something lacrosse related on social media?
Yeah, that was my first like truly viral moment. I had a big goal against Denver when I was a senior, and I like my phone blew up and stuff like that. But I had never seen anything like that before, and especially like credit to the PLL, like they've done such a good job. Kind of using that social media base that when it happened, like I think when the game was over or something, I had like 170 DMs on Instagram and like shitload of texts, bunch of missed calls. And I was like, oh God, this is actually bigger than I thought. And kind of the beauty of it all is I still, when I coach or like when I'm talking to people this day, they're like, yeah, like, are you going to kick his ass again? And I'm like, listen, that's my buddy. Like I like Blaze, and it was just a classic heat of the moment thing. Like,
yeah.
My teammate Sergio was kind of getting gooned up a little bit. So like I stepped in and like Troy Ray smoked Sergio, and, Rowlett cross-checked my helmet off, and, like I'm getting held back. Blaze body slams me. I punch him. So there's all these people involved in this scuffle. And at the end of the game, none of us really gave a shit. But like, we were just like, oh yeah, hey, things got out of hand there. Like classic, let's go grab a beer. And, some of these kids and some of the like, can't believe he body slammed you and then you shocked him and like this and that's like, okay, like easy. Like we understand the optics of it, but that's certainly like not what you should take away from it. So whenever I'm telling kids, I'm like, listen, like I was defending a teammate and I got body slammed. Like 3 of their guys went to the box. 1 of my guys went to the box. Like if you're in high school or if you're in college or if you're in youth and you do that, you're getting kicked out of the game, kicked out of the league, and you're actually hurting your team. Because I was in the PLL and like they kind of allow fighting, there's still kind of some gray area around it. Like all I had was a 5-minute penalty. They had 3 penalties, and then we played the rest of the game. So I kind of love taking the air out of the sails of kids that want me to be like, yeah, I'm going to kick someone's ass later. Like, no. Like when I saw him the other day and like, we dapped each other up. Actually, no, we didn't because we were quarantining.
Corona.
We just said hello to each other. But like we're still buddies and like we're still cordial with each other. So,
well, I think anyone that's played college lacrosse knows, especially like during preseason and like spring break when no one's there, just animosities rise and you get in fights in the practice with your teammates and like the 10 seconds after you just kind of have that, like you said, in the moment feeling, and then you kind of have to just it gets away and then you're good, and then same thing like you said, you're buddies and you go grab a drink after, and like that's just how sports sometimes are. And
that's just how it is.
What was one thing that kind of stuck out from your first year in the PLL compared to your other years in the NLL or the MLL?
I'd just say the first thing was kind of just like the quality of the content. As weird as that sounds, like kind of off the field, like it was the first time I had seen people going like, oh yeah, like I actually saw, like, oh yeah, you play lacrosse. I think I saw a clip of that somewhere. So just like the recognition of it kind of was awesome to see, where I wouldn't have to bring it up, where it's like, yeah, did you see this that happened last week? And they'd be like, oh yeah, like, hey, congrats, I saw your team's highlight or something. So even like for the most casual fan, the most casual college fan, they're aware of the PLL now. And then second is just the rules that they made, the 52-second shot clock, it makes it a very fast game. So, sometimes the MLL, we'd find myself whenever I was in a game, like, okay, comfortable, I'm getting dialed. And then in the PLL, it's kind of just, it's more like that indoor where I was telling you, where it's a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more up and down, a little bit more, I'm more tired. So I had to reassess the way that I'm preparing for this off season. And like, like it's neither better nor worse. It's just faster and a little bit more chaotic. So it's definitely been an interesting transition, but this training camp has been really awesome to get back and get dialed in.
So going into now year 2, there's been some subtractions from your team, some additions. Is there any players that were added that you're like super, super happy to play with?
Yeah, I mean the layup answer is Miles Jones. And I unfortunately apparently drew the short stick at some point, and I've had to guard him probably 25 times, I don't know, every day for the last 3 days. So we've definitely been knocking each other around and dodging and playing hard. So I'm glad that I don't have to go against a guy that size in the game. And then honestly, I'm really excited. Like I really like our face-off battle going on right now between Greg Pasculjan and Peyton Smith. Like they're both just two good dudes that we'll be going through like skeleton offense or skeleton D or something, and we'll just see them like borderline getting in a fight over face-offs off to the side, and we're like, oh, they're those crazy lunatic face-off guys. So even though we lost Greg Beast, who what a leader he is, I'm excited to see kind of the competition bring out the best of both of our face-off guys.
Yeah, and obviously as a pseudo face-off person, you do so much else in the field, I wouldn't call you a face-off guy. But what's
I don't know what you'd call me.
I think the Swiss Army knife is a pretty good kind of recognition of talent throughout everything. At least maybe football-wise, you kind of hear that too sometimes thrown around with like people that can return and then sometimes play offense and defense. Obviously, Patriots have a lot of those guys.
Exactly.
What did you kind of think when on Twitter there was a player named Kyle Hartzell who tweeted last year saying that I bet you $1,000 that you won't make a roster team a spot next year, and then you came back, made a roster spot. You're currently on the PLL island, as they call it, and then he refused to pay up his bet. And obviously now that you've kind of taken the good side of things and started a GoFundMe for OWLS Lacrosse and raised, I think, somewhere north of $8,000 currently, which is just fantastic for that organization. Right. Yeah. So how did that have you and Kyle kind of had beef before, and that just kind of obviously you like to talk and you like to use social media to talk as well. Is that just kind of something that kind of
Yeah.
just built and built?
Yeah. So like the brief story is like Hartzell bet Garrett Epple last year that the Woods wouldn't win a championship.
Mhm.
And so when we lost to the Whip Snakes in the championship, Epple said like immediately as soon as that happened, Hartzell requested 1,000 and Epple was good for it and paid. And so there was kind of like some beef around that. And I just, I was just like, I didn't play in that game and I was just kind of like pissed on Twitter anyways. So they had just gotten beat, I think like 25 to something. So I was like, how are you talking shit when you just got pumped, like whatever. And so I said, like, I'll bet you $1,000 that whatever team you're on next year won't win the championship. And then he responded, I'll bet you 1,000 that you don't make the roster. And I said, I accept. Flash forward. And then, yeah, so once I made the roster, I think Jordy actually brought it to my attention where he's like, hey, remember this bet? So I was just like, all right, like, pay your dues. Like you made the bet. I accepted it. And it's seemingly has like 5 excuses and he can't decide which one to use. So he goes with all of them at the same time. He's like, it was never a bet. I didn't see that he accepted. It was just a chirp. We didn't confirm it online. I'm like, all right, sure. Like whatever excuse you want to go. Like, I don't really give a shit about the $1,000. It's more of just kind of like the principle of it all. And then he accused me of like, wow, you must really need the money. Like you're broke. And I'm like, but you're not the one paying the bet. So that's kind of weird. So I was just like, all right, well then let's not make it about me. Let's, each PLL team is partnered up with a charitable organization, whether it's Harlem Lacrosse, whether it's OWLS, whatever it might be. There's some awesome organizations out there. And so I was like, all right, well, let's not make it about me. Let's make it about the OWLS. Like if you won't pay me, like, let's set up something for the OWLS. And he's like, oh, I'm already doing like a cameo with proceeds going there. And I was like, okay, cool. But like, let's pay them 1,000. So he didn't do that. So I started a GoFundMe. And, what I'm starting to realize is like, you can leverage entertainment on social media for any purpose. And for this purpose, they're like, I was entertained by that, so I'm going to donate. So the original goal was 1,000. And I was just like, all right, let's get 1,000. And I tentatively and realistically thought like 2,500 would be ridiculous. Like, but then like it started rolling, it started circulating. And yeah, we're up to 8,200. And me and a couple other buddies, we're getting ready to try and do this. Like we've talked to the OWLS directors, we've talked to some of our college coaches, and we're going to try and make this like more than 8,200 because a big fundraiser that they do is a golf tournament, and they couldn't host it this year because of COVID. So they're hurting, just like a bunch of other organizations that can't host their marquee event. So John Sexton is actually involved with them, and he's on my team, and he's just like, dude, like this is killing it. So we thought, well, why stop at 8,200? What's stopping us from tapping into kind of that Notre Dame Chicago network and really seeing what we could do with this? So it's almost like it's gone from a petty Twitter beef to, well, I don't even give a shit about that anymore. What can we do for the OWLS? And then just like a final note, like the crazy thing is, I always say like, you never want what you do on the field to be the first thing that people say about you. So like I've never attached who I am as a person to what I do on the field. So every time like I've gotten some text where it's like, yeah, like how did it feel when he chirped you about like making a roster? And I'm like, listen, I played in 4 games last year. Like I'm very well aware that I'm a healthy scratch, and I'm like probably on the tail end of my career, depending on what my training looks like and this and that. But I mean, at the end of the day, I want people to say like, oh, that's Nick. Like he made me laugh. He was a funny dude, and I'd love to grab a beer with him. Whereas other people will be like, they want that, oh my God, he's a stud lacrosse player. Cause shit, if you put all your eggs in the basket of what you can do on the field, if you get an injury or when you retire, you're going to be kind of lost. And, like I realized that in high school when like, we lost like a state championship and like I got like booed off the field. I was like, well, this sucks. Like I don't want a bad game to ruin my entire life. So I'm just going to start honing in on being a better person. So that's what I think, like, this huge transition is like, okay, there's a petty Twitter beef, but actually what can we do so that instead of being like, oh, that's Nick Ossello, that's the guy that talks shit on Twitter, it's like, oh, that's Nick Ossello, that's the guy that talks but actually, he was involved with that OWLS thing, and no, that was really cool. So it's kind of been this cool transition, and that's really, all I have to say about it. There's a lot of people that are trying to get me to do, like, the big, ooh, like, talk shit before the game, this and that. And it's like, I'm just seeing what I can do for OWLS at this point.
Awesome. Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And I'll make sure to put the link to that GoFundMe below for if
That'd be
anyone watches
awesome.
this. But kind of to close, PLL Island, obviously that's kind of a new concept, this kind of quarantining as a league. And obviously the PLL is one of the smaller sports leagues, so it's pretty attainable.
Yeah.
How has that experience been for you personally?
It's been awesome. And one of the things is, like, when you're not there on the roster every week, it becomes difficult to gain momentum. So I noticed, like, when I played in Chicago and when I played in Washington, D.C., and then I played in Hamilton too. Those are the 3 games that I played in last year. There was so much time in between those games that sometimes it was hard. It would take me a second to catch back up to speed. So we've been doing 2-a-days, and I've never had more fun doing hard-ass 2-a-days in my entire life. So to get back into the swing of things and to, like, really immerse back into kind of like that college, that training camp, that play lacrosse every day, it's hugely beneficial for the guys that are in my spot that kind of need that consistent, on-field capabilities, because the last time we played in a bunch of weekends in a row was training camp last year. So it's been hugely beneficial for me. And just, holy shit, did I need this, just because with the quarantine and, like, not seeing many people, and, like, the locker room right now is just buzzing, and we're all just so excited to see each other and hang out and shoot the shit that, it's exactly what the doctor ordered to get out of this, Corona, depression, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't know what the future looks like, but I know that these 3 weeks that I'm spending with my team will get me through, whatever the next couple months look like.
100%. And I couldn't wish more to be on a team environment right now. Just hang with the guys. Like, obviously you have so many connections with people that you went to college with, now played with for a year, or played with in the pro ranks. It must be awesome to kind of really switch up what people have been, depending on where you live, could be locked inside or kind of reserved to a certain area. And obviously that's kind of the reason we're talking today. You kind of stuck in one area. So, but thank you so much for coming on today. Really love learning more about you as a person and your kind of journey through lacrosse. Where can people find you at social media?
My Instagram is Nosello, Ossello, and my Twitter is Nick Ossello. Follow me, don't follow me, do what you want. So thank you for having me on, man. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you in the meantime.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And make sure to check out the link in the bottom with the OWLS GoFundMe as well.
Donate. If you don't donate, you hate kids.